So I want to thank everyone for their punctuality. Want to be respectful of your time. And so just to make sure you're in the right place, welcome to Stony Brook Schools virtual open house. And we'll be talking about campus life and spirituality tonight. And depending on where you're joining us from, it could be good evening or good morning or good afternoon. But we're so thankful that you're with us and grateful that you're taking the time to learn more about Stony Brook School. My name is Yuri Francis, and I serve as the Director of Enrollment Management, which is just a fancy way of saying that I'm responsible for overseeing the admissions operation at the Brook. And just so you know, this is our second virtual event, and it's our first virtual open house. And it's the first of many virtual houses that we're going to offer during the course of the next 6 or 7 weeks. So there are many topics that we plan to cover during that time. And you probably saw in the email that you received in terms of the invitation, the different topics that we're planning to talk about. So we definitely, hopefully this won't be the last time that we get to connect with you and engage with you. We're looking forward to sharing with you all the good news about the Stony Brook School and to enable you to learn more about us and to develop a relationship and hopefully eventually a partnership. Next slide. So in terms of tonight, here's the program in front of you. We will, I'm joined and pretty excited to be joined by 3 of my esteemed colleagues, Dustin Moniz, Lydia O'Brien, and Mark Tejan. And actually, we're gonna skip ahead to the next slide for a second. There you go. And so gives you a great opportunity to put a name with a face. And then if we return to the previous slide. Okay, so Dustin and Lydia and Mark will be covering their topics and presenting for a few minutes. And we encourage you to take the time to ask questions. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. Don't hesitate to type in questions as they're sharing about their respective topics. And then later in the program, during the Q&A session, we will present those questions to them. And so they'll be providing their answers. And then after that, I will come on just to review the application process and the next steps. Next slide. Just to cover some expectations. By now, you've probably realized that your camera and your microphone are turned off during this webinar. And it's just to really avoid any distractions. I talked about the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're wondering, well, Yuri, you know what happens if you don't get to my question, or if there isn't enough time, or if I'm not able to remain on the webinar until the end? Not to worry. Within the next 48 hours, you will receive an email with a list of all the questions and answers that come up during this program. And that way you'll be able to catch up on all the information. You won't miss out on anything. In addition, we also will provide you with a link to the recording of this event. Next slide. Okay, so I'll take a pause for a moment, and really this is a great time for me to gather some information from our audience. So there's 2 questions on my mind that you can help me with. And one is, where are you joining us from? And so we're gonna poll our attendees. On your screen, you'll see, and there's a question that should show up, and it's basically letting us know, where are you joining us from? For many of you, it might be Long Island. And for others, it might be New York, other parts of New York, or out of state. So just chime in, take a moment. And it looks like most of our attendees are are in Long Island. For the folks that are out of state or out of the country, it'd be great in the chat feature if you can let us know which state and which country you're joining us from, and then I'll share that with the group. Okay, and then I'm going to share the results. Okay, wonderful. And then the next question is basically, yeah, what stage of the admissions cycle are you in? And if you haven't done anything, meaning you haven't even submitted an inquiry form, then you're just starting out. If you've received your acceptance from the admissions office, but you haven't decided yet, you're an admitted student. And so you can take a moment and let us know kind of which stage you're at. Okay, so it looks like most folks have already started, and got a lot of admitted students, some enrolled students. It's kind of a good mix here. Okay, let me share that with you. Wonderful. So certainly a thank you for the feedback. So we've got someone joining us from Spain, Connecticut, Prague, Pennsylvania. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so at this time I get to turn the program over to Dustin Moniz, our Director of Student Life. And Dustin is in his 4th year at the Stony Brook School. He and I arrived at the same time, and he is also our baseball coach. So without further ado, Dustin Moniz. Take it away, Dustin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm excited to share a little bit about the Student Life program at Stony Brook. If you'd go to the next slide, please. Great. So I wrote down a few just kind of focus points for our Student Life program, and I'd just like to talk a little bit about each one of these. The first one is to know and to love. I think one of the biggest separators of Stony Brook from other schools, boarding schools, private schools, day schools, is just how well we know our students. And every faculty at Stony Brook is really committed to not just understanding the 360 view of our students, meaning their social life, their academic life, their athletic life, their spiritual life, their family life. But we really, everyone who works at Stony Brook is committed to their students really full time. Not only are we in the classroom with our students, but we're also with them in the dormitories. We're having dinner with them. We are their coaches during athletics. So we really do spend so much time with our students that we cultivate a love for every single one of our students. We know them extremely well, and I think the ability to do that is the reason why our community is so strong and why our students benefit so much from living on campus, but also even day students attending our school, because there's so many caring adults around them. One of the ways that we ensure that our students are known and loved is our advisor program at Stony Brook. So we have each student is paired with a mentor, an adult mentor, who will walk through their years at Stony Brook with them. And so we get to know these students very well. Each advisor or mentor has about 6 students in their group. And we eat lunch with them every Tuesday. And we are constantly monitoring kind of how they're doing socially, how they're doing academically, spiritually, athletically. Again, that 360 view of our students. And it also serves as a first point of contact for parents. So if a parent has a question about a class, or sometimes students tend to tell us more than they're telling their parents at home. And so when parents have questions about kind of how their student is doing, how they're interacting at school, there's somebody at Stony Brook who can that they can contact and know that that person is very close to their child. So I think our advisor program is kind of testament to how we operate, and I think our students are just, they really benefit from how well we are connected to their lives in that way. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is our community and leadership. Boarding at Stony Brook or being a day student at Stony Brook is truly fun. And I'll let my colleague Lydia O'Brien talk more about kind of the specifics of what our weekends are like and what some of our activities are. But this community is extremely close, and we have a lot of fun together. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we eat formal style family meals together in our dining hall in the evening. We gather on weekends for dances. We gather for all types of different activities that Lydia will get into a little bit more detail with. But the idea is to draw our community together to provide a safe place for families, both day and boarding, to kind of have their kids on Fridays and Saturday nights, where our students are engaging in community, they're engaging in relationships and kind of the social skills that will last a lifetime. And along the way, they have a ton of fun. One of the things that I also want to talk about in terms of community is that we are not just focused on our own community. One of the big points that we make with our students, big focus that we have with our students, is in our service program. And so we are focused on service at home and at Stony Brook, meaning we have a program like a work job program where our students serve our own school. Our boarders are cleaning dishes after dinner. Our day students are cleaning up after the day is over in our classrooms and doing other jobs around campus. And we are taking care of our own community, but we're also very focused on the outward community. And so our students are doing service all around Long Island. We're involved in organizations like Habitat for Humanity and Lighthouse Mission, and our students are really focused on what they can bring, their skills and their, the privilege that we have of being students here to the outside community. Another thing that goes right into that is our leadership program, which is a huge emphasis in student life. We have someone who is directing our leadership program, who is continually working with our students so that they can have kind of a servant's heart and learn how to manage a position where they have some real responsibility and they have some people who are following and under their leadership. And so every one of our dorms has a prefect and a bunch of dorm council members who all work within that dorm to guide the students who live there. And then we have that in many other areas. We have academic prefects, we have admissions prefects, and so there is a culture of service and leadership that goes hand in hand with the Stony Brook community. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on before I turn it over is just how transformative life at Stony Brook really is for our students. Our students, through kind of the community and leadership and having mentors in their lives and the incredible diversity that exists at Stony Brook among its students and our faculty, our students are absolutely prepared for kind of whatever environment they go into when they leave here. I often talk to some of our residential life parents, and after the first trimester, they're like, "What did you do to my child?" They're doing the laundry, they're picking up after themselves, they're engaging in conversations that they normally don't engage in, they're asking big questions, they're thoughtful. And so the lifestyle that is created at Stony Brook and the constant attention to each kid and the care that they're getting throughout a period of time has a true transformation, is made and our students really not only grow academically, but you'll see that they grow spiritually, they grow in their independence, they grow as a person. And those are our focuses in student life, and our students benefit very much from the love and care of our faculty here. And yeah, it's a pleasure for me to continue to work with these individuals and build something that's a truly transformative experience for our kids. So yeah, so I guess I'll turn it back over to Yuri and to introduce Ms. O'Brien.
All right, so next up is Lydia O'Brien.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Lydia O'Brien. I work as the Director of Activities and Community Service. Like many of my colleagues, I wear a lot of hats here. So I also work as the assistant to the Director of Student Life, who you just heard from, as well as I'm a dorm head in one of our girls' dorms here on campus. But today I wanted to talk more about activities and community service. And how it's been a privilege for me to be part of this program. We truly go beyond just the normal event experience. Activities at Stony Brook is more than filling the hours and trying to avoid boredom. As Dustin mentioned, this is the way that we connect with each other. It's through our annual traditions, it's through all of our weekend activities. These are the avenues for our students making this place a home. I conducted some recent interviews with our students and asked them, what is your favorite activity here on campus? And each one said it was that activity where they first met their best friend. It was where they first felt welcomed as a new student. It was where they started to identify with their grade or with their dorm or become a Stony Brooker. It was those moments that really help them be part of our community. So it becomes that stepping stone to make this place really feel like a family. This is how we make our connections. This is where we make our memories. And we want to help students continue to have experiences that they would probably never have had before. So if you can go to the next slide for me. And the way that we do that is, it's step one, day one. We want to, from the very start, we want to make sure that our students know the community that they are going to be a part of. And what is amazing, as Dustin mentioned, we have opportunities for students to be leaders on our campus. And one of those ways is through our activities council. And it's our students who get together and tell me, I remember what that's like. I remember what it's like to step on campus and think, is this place ever going to feel like home? Am I ever going to have friends like they do? And it's our students who say, we know what that feels like. Let's figure out a way to make them feel welcome. They want to walk with your student from day one, step one. They want to welcome them and make this place home. And that's how that's our main focus with a lot of our activities. This is also the place where they make memories. As I mentioned, we've got some of our activities are where people meet their first friends, perhaps at a class challenge, which you see pictured on the slide there. That's where all of our grades compete. That's where they first get to know people on their grade. They see what it's like to be here. And as sad as it is, this is also the thing that our students this year are grieving the most. We had to end our year so early, and we are sad with them and we grieve with them, but that tells me we're doing something right. If that is something that they are looking forward to, that they want as part of their experience, and we're going to keep that part of our program in order to continue to make those memories together that will last a lifetime. The other part too is experiences. Some of our students, they never thought that they would go rock climbing. They never thought that they would cook something over a campfire or go camping or gardening. And we want to give that diversity in experiences so that they can they can think, I never thought to try that, but man, I'm so glad that I did. So if you can go to the next slide for me. And these are the activities that they remember. As I mentioned, we have a council that comes together. It's made up of day and border students. Every grade is represented, nationalities. And so we have that diversity of ideas coming together to help us think through what could be fun, what could be welcoming. So as I mentioned, some of our annual events that our students look forward to every year are class challenges. Those are our bookends. It's the very first experience they have, and it's one of the last events that we have on campus. And those are the times where they make their friends, they make those connections. We have dances, we've got open dorms, and that's where a dorm just opens up and says, you know, come on campus, our day students are welcome, there's food, there's music. And that's the first time a lot of their friends get to see their home, literally where they live. One of my favorite events that we have been bringing back are open houses. And that's where a faculty will open their home to 100+ teenagers. And they're the ones who provide the food. They're the ones who want to do an activity together. My favorite memory is walking in our director of middle school. She hosted an open house, and I walked into her dining room table crammed with teenagers, poring over a bunch of yearbooks, trying to find their favorite faculty, seeing what they looked like back in the day. It was connections they were making with each other, but it was also one of the first times that they made those connections with faculty, that they felt safe. They got to be part of their home, their family. Those are the memories a student looks back on and says, I know I can go to my faculty and I can talk to them about anything, because that's how we get to know them. We invite them literally into our home. And we also try to put as many offerings as we can into a weekend. So that could be anything, as I mentioned, from rock climbing. We have some faculty here who love it, and they want to bring students with them to experience that together. Or perhaps go into the city for a Broadway trip. We want them to have the typical teenage experience and go to the mall, or we might rent out a movie theater or go to Six Flags. So a typical weekend for us, we normally kickstart it Friday evening, something together, some type of community event. And then we would be able to have that evening event be community building. So it might be something like a movie on the lawn, or perhaps a pool night, or a badminton competition. And then Saturday, we normally would have an afternoon outing. So we would go to the mall, we would go out somewhere together, and a service trip as well would be offered that day, which I'll talk more about later, and an evening event. And then Sunday, we want to help them get into that rhythm to know Monday's coming. So it would usually be a little bit more low key, but we would want to offer them some type of activity together. And then we end the day with our chapel service. And I know, as I'm mentioning all of these things, in the back of your mind, our alarm is going off of COVID-19. And there is a lot of unknown with next year, with what will be safe, with what we can offer. But I have been so impressed with our administration for equipping us in a way that we are prepared for the unknown. And one of the ways that we're doing that is by putting together a task force, and that's comprised of local parents, that's comprised of doctors, state health officials, and that becomes our filter as we're planning weekends and activities to keep our students safe, which is of the utmost importance. We're able to go to them and run ideas by them and make sure that these events are safe for our students. So if you can go to the next slide. And even now, it's been amazing to me just with the online presence that we're able to have with our students, being able to do dance challenges, lip sync battles. One of our faculty members was able to put together a live Instagram account and did a DJ set One of our faculty has been doing cooking shows, and which again shows our students want to have that connection. They've been coming in amazing amounts. We've had at least 30 to 40 students at our activities, even online, which shows me they miss this. They want to keep these connections. And you can go to the next slide for me. But coupled with this is also community service. This is the way that we have made those connections, but we also want to teach our students to now see the needs of others, to see how they can contribute to the world and make it a better place. So for our students, we require one service trip per year. But what amazes me is for many of our students, that's not even enough. They want to do more. So we have comprised a council of students. They get together. They're the ones who come together and come up with creative ways that we can meet a need either here on our campus or in our community or even globally. They want to make the difference no matter where they are. So if you can go to the next slide. And it's even amazed me how much they've been able to accomplish in this past year. We were able to raise money for clean water in underdeveloped countries. A lot of our students, even with the year cut short, we comprise of about 500 plus service hours amongst all of our students. But I wanted to share two stories in particular. One of them, at one point, 3 of our amazing artists on campus came to me and they said, we've been watching the news. We've been seeing how animals are being affected by Australian wildfires, and they wanted to do something about it. And so they put together these pins that you see on this slideshow. They did the artwork, they did the design, they did the selling. I was just there to help walk with them and equip them. This was a passion they had, and we came alongside them to make it happen. And they were able to raise money and see that they could put their skills to use in filling a need, and they sent that money for relief work in Australia. Another student came and said he wanted to work with an organization that helped foster children. He had heard a story of how foster children many times show up to their new home just with a trash bag to hold their belongings. And this organization he researched was able to put together these welcome kits. So we partnered with him. We helped make that dream come true for him. And our students put together over 20 plus duffel bags for foster children in our area. So again, this shows me that our students have a heart for this, and they want to show their fellow students what it is, how it feels to fill a need, to help someone. And if you can go to the next slide, it's amazed me that even now, this hasn't stopped. Our students, even amidst a quarantine, have been empowered to make a difference. It's part of their character, it's who they are, it's part of their DNA. One of our students came up with a step-by-step process in order to put together masks for people in her community. Another girl was just recently featured on the news for her efforts to raise money and supplies for her local food shelter. It's humbled me, the drive that our students have to do this. They truly are putting life to this motto that we have of character before career. And we continue to empower them to do that. We want them to see what it's like to make that difference and leave a legacy, leave the world a better place. So with that, I think I'm going to be turning it back to Yuri. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. And next up is Dr. Tejan.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Tejan, and it's my privilege to serve as the chaplain at Stony Brook. I'm also the chair of the Bible department. And I'm just going to share briefly about sort of my approach to spiritual life at Stony Brook, and then some of the activities that your students can get involved with. So the first thing I want to say is that Stony Brook, as you may know, it's a Christian school, obviously, but we're a non-covenantal school. And that's a word, non-covenantal. I didn't even know what it meant till I arrived here. But basically what it means is we don't require students or families to have any particular religious background to attend here. And what that means is that we have a wide array, a wide diversity of students coming from all religious backgrounds and some from no religious backgrounds. And I have to be honest with you, that's one of the things that actually drew me to this job. I came from a different sort of vocational track, and I love it at Stony Brook. I love the fact that we are committed to faith, but we are committed to faith in a way that makes everyone feel welcome. So could you point to the next slide, please? So three aspects I want to share about our objectives. The first is to instruct students in faith. So what does it mean to have faith? And really what I mean there is we, as Christians, we take the Bible to be God's word. And so students are going to learn both in terms of the classroom experience, but also in chapel and other programs, which I'll get to in a moment. They're going to learn the basic story of the Bible and how it is one unified story, and how they can sort of join that story, if you will. But we're also going to invite them to think about how faith connects to culture. We all live in particular cultures, and how do we understand what it means to have faith or to believe in God in the particular culture that we live in? Secondly, one of my objectives in religious life, spiritual life, is to challenge faith. And so my background is philosophy, and so I'm used to having conversations with students, asking them not just what do you believe, but why do you believe it? And so I think it's important, whether you come from one background of faith or another, for all of our students to know not only what they believe, but why they believe it. And so that's very important to us. Third, of course, one of my main objectives is to nurture faith. And so for those students who choose the path of faith, choose to follow God, we want to support them. This is a Christian school. Our mission, we hold to our mission with seriousness and with joy. And so students who come here because it's a Christian school, we want them to feel like they are supported. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to point to are just a few of the sort of spiritual life opportunities. Next slide, if you don't mind. So here are just a few of the things. All three things here: Driven, Bible studies, and mission trips. These are all voluntary opportunities for students. So Driven is like a youth group, just like a church might have a youth group, and it meets weekly. It's mostly student run. There are games, there's singing, there's sharing with one another. There's usually a message. Bible studies range from looking, as it sounds like, to a book of the Bible, but we also take on maybe hot topics in culture, or maybe theological questions like, why does God allow evil? I'm actually leading that Bible study after this tonight at 9:00. And then mission trips. Lydia, who just spoke a minute ago, has led a couple trips to France, and students have gone and served the poor and the hungry and the actually refugees there. And that's also important, a part of what we offer for spiritual life. Next slide, please. And then a few more opportunities. Chapel, as you can see there, is actually the only required spiritual life activity. Every Wednesday during the lunch hour, we gather for chapel. If you're a boarding student, you'll also gather on Sundays. And chapel services, they vary at times, but typically they involve what you might expect from religious service: some singing, some scripture reading, and a message. And then gathering is an opportunity for students to meet during the day, whether it's to pray together, to share their stories together. We also have started something new this year, which is worship night, where students get together simply to sing songs to God. And it's a beautiful time together. It's on the weekend, feels a little different. The last thing I'll share with you is probably the most popular activity in spiritual life, and that is the Driven Retreat. Every January, we take about 100 students. That's about a quarter of our student body up to New Hampshire. And we sled down some snow hills, and we just have a ball and have fun. And we hear some talks about faith and things like that. And I promise you, it is probably one of the most, if not the most popular sort of activity that students say, hey, that really was amazing. So there's a lot more I could say, but I want to keep it brief. Happy to answer some questions. So I'll turn it back to you, Yuri.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Mark. And so now at this time, if you go to the next slide, yep, Q&A. And one of the first questions that came up was, we understand the school has a religious focus. How does the school manage beliefs other than Christianity or kids who have received secular education? So Mark, you want to take that one?
Sure. Certainly there's no, as I stated, there's no religious requirement to attend here. And in the same way, there's no sort of knowledge requirement. So you don't need to have studied the Bible or the history of religion to come here. In fact, we'll teach it to you. In terms of students of faith, I met with a student who belongs to a religion that's not Christianity. We had coffee at Dunkin' Donuts in the late fall. And I asked him, I was like, hey, you're a senior. I really am curious, what has it been like for you to be a sort of religious minority at Stony Brook? And he said, I wouldn't change anything. I felt very respected. I felt like I could express my own religious faith. But I, overall, the sense I got from him was this was a place that was good for him, which was comforting to me because it's my goal, as a follower of Jesus, that I'm a Christian. Of course, one of the major commands of my religion is to love my neighbor. And so the way that we love our students is through supporting them regardless of their religious position. So that's what I would say.
Okay, wonderful. And before I go any further, I wanted to address, I know the elephant in the room is COVID-19, and I know for many of our attendees, you may be wondering, well, what's the school's response or plans for the opening of the school year for 2020, 2021. And so the message really at this time is that we are planning to start school on campus in August. But at the same time, please note that we are also discussing other scenarios, and we are aware of the uncertainty and the concern that exists from prospective families and enrolled families. Our head of school plans to provide an update by the end of June, and we will share that update with all prospective families and enrolled families at that time. And so just wanted to let you know. And then also I would direct you to our website. There's near the top of the screen, you'll see, or the top of the page, you'll see a COVID-19 update. And that's where we place all of kind of the latest information and news related to how Stony Brook School is handling the pandemic. And next up, there's a question, is there chapel daily or evening religious services or solely Sunday chapel? So Mark?
Yeah, so we have chapel every Wednesday. So if you are a day student, you go to chapel once a week. And then if you are a boarder, you'll also attend a Sunday service, which is a little bit longer than the weekday chapel. So in terms of actual chapel services, there are one or two, depending if you're a day student or boarder. And then if you want to attend Driven or a Bible study or gathering or worship night, you could have something to do, but basically every day of the week. We typically offer, I would say, 4 Bible studies every trimester. Those often are during dinner. And there are some kids who will sign up for 3 of those. The requirement, the number of requirements is relatively small, but the sort of options are rather large. So.
All right. And there was a question about what forms of communication are available to boarders. Dustin, you want to take that one?
Sure. So I would imagine, are we talking about communication from, and I'll try to, write it in the question, in the chat if I don't answer your question, but boarders are able to contact their parents at their leisure. The only time that we ask that boarders do not kind of be on the phone with their parents or that type of thing is during our study hours. So each evening for an hour and 45 minutes, our students are in their rooms dedicated to studying. And so during that time period, we ask everyone to kind of we actually have what is known as Yonder bags. And what it is it's a bag that the students put their phone in. As soon as they put their phone in that bag, it locks. And they're actually not able to access their phone for that hour and 45 minutes. And then after study hours, we unlock their phone. And many of our students then will call their parents immediately after that. But obviously some of our students and their parents are in different time zones, and we always work to make sure that our students are able to communicate with their child.
Okay, wonderful. And let's see. There's a question about, is enrollment still available for 10th grade class? Yes, it is. And someone asked about the current diversity ratio of the school. So we are approximately 30% students of color, and 29% of our student population is international, and 71% is domestic. And what's the relationship like between boarders and day students? And isn't it hard to meld the groups in some ways, since the boarders are there 24/7 and live together? Dustin, you want to take that question?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And at many boarding schools, this is something that is very difficult. Like Dr. Tejan had mentioned earlier, maybe it was Yuri who mentioned it earlier. I've been here for the last 4 years. We came in together, and one of the first things that I was super impressed with is just how close-knit our community is. Day students are often staying in our dorms on weekends. It's something that we encourage. So each day student has the option to, spend a night in the dorm. We also, I think, through just kind of a diversity of programming that Lydia does in terms of the different types of events. I think I think our student body at large is really just interested in being here on the weekend and at certain events, especially on Friday nights. And what happens is through kind of the community that's created around that, our kids get very close to each other. And so I think athletics, the way we have meals, our advising program is designed specifically to mix our day students and our boarders. And I think through all those different facets, our kids get very, very close to each other. So I don't really see a big difference between or separation between day students and boarders. I think everyone feels equally part of the community here.
Great. And then we've got an activities question here. So what kind of activities are available to students during the week, or do they mostly occur on the weekends? Lydia.
Yes. So we find that our students are actually very busy during the week. As Mark mentioned, we offer a lot of our Bible studies, our dinner, students are welcome to come to. And then we try to still have those touch points. We have our advisory meetings during the week, but we do find that our students are very, very busy just with homework and wanting to focus on their academics. So a lot of our activities are on the weekends. And the reason that we try to make sure there's a Friday activity as well as a Saturday is to encourage those day students to be able to come. A lot of our open dorms are on Friday because we want them to be there. We want them to see what that's like. And then another benefit is all of our councils have that mix of boarder and day. And I'll even be stopped in a meeting where we're planning an event, and the boarders will say, wait, Miss O'Brien, what about the day students? Like, we need to make sure they can come. We want to include them. So as Dustin mentioned, it's very good interaction between day and boarder. But we definitely want to have those opportunities available for both.
All right, so there's time for one or two more questions. The first one, are there any age-specific Christian life and community events or programs for middle school, grades 7 and 8? Mark?
Yeah, so for the most part, I would say our programming integrates the 7th and 8th grade with the high school. My daughter this year is in 7th grade. And I'm actually happy about that integration. I will say chapel during the week is split between sort of the younger students and the older students. But there's a group of student leaders, who they are ranged from all grades, but they include sort of what we call a delegate. A delegate is a ninth grade leader. And that ninth grade chapel delegate is in charge of sort of organizing activities specifically for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So for example, right now, they are every Wednesday night, they did it last night, and my daughter participated. They're doing sort of a devotional where they talk about the Bible and read some scripture while they're sort of following some recipe together. I think last night it was like God and pancakes or something. And it sounds a little funny, but it's really cute. And of course they're doing good things. I mean, there's not a lot of places on earth where kids are like cooking together and talking about God. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, those activities exist, but I'd say for the most part, the students are together, the grades. And again, for me as a parent of a 7th grader, but also as the person who mentors the Christian student leaders, I think one of the most impactful things on a young student's faith is when an older student really encourages them, teaches them, prays with them, sort of challenges them. And so I think you'll be happy with the way it kind of works in a sort of hybrid sort of way at Stony Brook.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'll just answer this last question. How many day students versus boarding students? So we started the year with roughly, I think it was 208 boarding students and 204 day students. So it's roughly a 50-50 breakdown of boarding to day students. So that's wonderful. Thank you for all your questions. As I mentioned earlier, we will send out a list of all of the questions and answers via email within the next 48 hours or so. And so it's now 7:48 p.m. I will move quickly through the application process and next steps, but we certainly want to be respectful of your time. And certainly thank our guests who could stay with us this long. Next slide. So admissions process, and next slide. All right, so what you have here is just a snapshot of our how to apply page from our website. And so I'd encourage you to go check out the SBS website when you get a chance. One of my colleagues will type in the URL in the chat feature down below. But there's a lot of detail on that page. And so I'm not going to drill down into that detail, but just do a quick overview. The inquiry form is a great way for us to add you to our database and to just really keep you abreast of what's going on campus and just up to date on the latest news related to Stony Brook School and activities, sports, things of that nature. The online application, we utilize what's called the SAO. It stands for the Standard Application Online. It's a common app. And then next up is the interview. All students are required to interview that apply. It should come as no surprise that at this time, we're conducting all of our interviews via video chat. So utilizing both Skype and Zoom. And then next is the testing. And all students are required to take some form of standardized testing. So the most popular is the SSAT, stands for Secondary School Admission Test. But there are a lot of other options as well, like the IC, the SAT, the ACT, and the PSAT. And in terms of our international students, in addition to one of those tests, if English is not your first language, we do encourage you to take the TOEFL, but we also do accept the IELTS, Duolingo, LTIS, or the Cambridge exam. And then for recommendation forms, we do require the math teacher and the English teacher recommendation, and it should be from your current teachers. And then there's the principal/guidance counselor form. And I often will tell parents that any administrator that knows your child well can fill out that form. And transcripts. We do require the current transcript as well as from the 2 previous school years. And then if there are families that are interested in financial aid, please note that we do work with a company by the name of TADS. That's TADS, and they will, you'll send them all of your financial documents. We're able to see everything that you share with them. They will crunch the numbers and send us an estimate. So that concludes the application process. Next slide. All right, so next steps. It's really the thing that we want you to know and make you aware of is that we're just here to try to connect with you and build a relationship, and that hopefully will end up in a partnership between Stony Brook School and you as a family. We want to stay connected with you. If there's anyone that we can connect you with at the school, so for the students, if there's a program that you're interested in, athletics, the fine and performing arts, or a certain activity, don't hesitate to let us know. And you can do that by reaching out via email. So sending an email to admissions@sbs.org, and then we will connect you with that particular program head or coach or department chair, so whoever it may be. One of my colleagues is going to type in the URL for the inquiry form. So if you haven't filled that out yet, you can take a look. And then, as I mentioned earlier, within the next probably 48 hours, you're going to receive via email a survey. And so we would love for you to share with us any kind of feedback. We strive to improve and get better. So hopefully you thought we did a good job, hopefully. But if there's 1 or 2 things that we can improve on, please let us know. And then follow us on social media. If you go to the SBS website, at the bottom of the page, you'll see all of our social media channels. So whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, they're all there. Please click on one of them, and you'll be able to stay on track or just find out about what's going on and what's the latest. And then last but not least, I would encourage you to join us next week, Thursday. We've got another fantastic event scheduled for you. Next slide. So next week, 2 of my colleagues will be talking about the middle school experience and the upper school experience. So Tonya Detweiler, who is our middle school director, has been at the school for, I think she's celebrating her 25th year this year. And then Chris Ryan, who's our upper school director. You're in for a treat, so don't miss out on that. But again, if for some reason you're not able to join us, we will be recording the event. And so that's next Thursday, May 21st at 7 p.m. And I can't thank you enough for joining us today. You've been a wonderful audience, and we look forward to connecting with you in the weeks to come. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening or morning or day. All right. That ends our virtual open house.